Alrighty. Welcome one, welcome all. This is week 4 of NFL football. Let's jump right into it, guys, and let's talk about that Thursday night stomping of the Green Bay Packers, which, if you're not a Packers fan, you absolutely love to see it. Packers have had just an absolute stranglehold on the NFC North for a long, long time, and it's like a breath of fresh air to see a new team emerge, and especially it being the Lions of all teams in that division. Um, so I'll get into the details here. Dave Montgomery, wow. All I can say is we're shocked as much as you guys are. And a lot of teams out there did not have him in your lineups, and rightfully so. He, at like 1 p.m., they were saying that he was, still questionable, and even they were going to err on the side of caution, just because it was going to have a long rest period between now and the next game. And then he comes out, they just ride him to victory. 32 carries, 3 touchdowns. I mean, if you did play him on that last minute whim, like whatever, I don't have a better option. Hey, then that's awesome. Kudos to you. And if you didn't, we're here for you. We definitely didn't expect it as much as the next person. So he was pretty much the fantasy highlight of that game for both sides. Amon-Ra was able to squeak in a touchdown. Jared Goff had, iffy output, and which is not on his fault. The passing game was effective, but they just didn't. The game script and the flow of that game in the early goings, they just got short field, and the Lions defense just dominated at the line of scrimmage. So, Kyle, on the flip side of the ball, what did you see from the Packers offense?
Well, especially on the first half here, we have an absolute disaster for the Packers. I think they finished the second quarter by halftime. They had like 15 total yards this game. And, they didn't start getting going until the second half, but by then it was too late. Dobbs had a great game again. It seems like Jordan Love really wants to target him. He had 9 catches for 95 yards. He was targeted 13 times. And the Packers, they just had to abandon the run early on because of the game script. They had to chase points all game long. Ended up with Jordan Love getting 2 touchdowns here, which was basically garbage time because they were down by so much. But if you have Love in a double quarterback league, you'll take 2 touchdowns, especially. But for the rest of the Packers, Aaron Jones got like 5 carries the whole game. AJ Dillon maybe got like 2 or 3 carries. It just wasn't a pretty sight for anyone else besides those 2 players in regards to fantasy. So yeah, this Packers team, it's really interesting. The Lions clearly are the better team here. That's what they showed us on Thursday. And it's going to be interesting to see if Green Bay is able to fight for a wild card spot or if they're just going to sink based off of this performance.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of question marks to answer going into. I mean, obviously they were without Jair Alexander, but I don't think him on the field, to be honest with you, was going to make too much of a difference with the way that that team played last on Thursday night. So, um, anyway, yeah, let's jump right into the injury segment. Go ahead and tell me who you are looking at first.
So the first injury I'm looking at for today is Saquon Barkley. They have him officially listed as doubtful versus Seattle. Odds are he's probably not going to play this game after spraining his ankle a couple weeks back. The left tackle as well for the Giants apparently is not going to play. So this Giants team is very depleted. They're going up against this Seattle team that's going to try and continue their winning pace that they got right here. It's going to be really tough for the Giants, especially if you have any of these Giants players in your team in fantasy. Daniel Jones is probably going to be under pressure a lot. It's going to be hard for the Giants to make anything of this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, desperate for a running game for sure. Continuing on with star running backs. So Austin Eckler still listed as doubtful. Um, there's a couple of you might be able to dig and find a website or two that's showing some hope for him, but it seems like this ankle sprain or whatever it is really just lingering. And they're obviously being careful because now they've got a win under their belt and they're going up against the Raiders team this week that might be without their starting quarterback. I think that they might just be playing cautious here with him, and they've been able to put up points and move the ball plenty efficiently without him. I can only imagine what this Chargers offense is going to look like when they get him back on the field, um, especially with Mike Williams tearing his ACL last week. It's going to be a big blow to them. Hopefully, those other receivers can step up in his absence to keep that going. But yeah, I would definitely wait and see at the last minute. And who knows? Maybe they list him as active and give him a few snaps. Maybe they just list him as active, don't even use him just to kind of throw off the Raiders. We'll see. But I'll roll right into the next one. And just on the flip side of that same game, I'll talk about Jimmy Garoppolo's status. Questionable with a concussion. Had that weird kind of helmet-to-helmet hit and towards the end of that game last week on Monday night. So not having that extra day to help him get cleared and get the full practices in that he needs, that's going to definitely hinder his ability to get back out on the field this week. If somehow he's able to get cleared and play, I mean, I guess we'll pretty much know by the end of tonight, really, if it's going to happen or not. But man, it would be a dream matchup against the Chargers defense that has struggled, and he's got two very explosive receivers in Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams. So if you're a Jimmy Garoppolo fantasy owner, this is definitely probably the best matchup he's had on paper going into this season so far. So unfortunately, it looks like he might miss it. But who else do you got for us, Cal?
All right, so my next injury up here is Derek Carr against the Buccaneers. He is officially listed as a game time decision. And in my opinion, I'd be willing to bet that they kind of sit him out for this game. It's still early in the season. They're not playing for anything insane, even though this is a division game. Jameis Winston should be a serviceable backup. He is a volume passer, even though he does tend to make mistakes. He tends to throw interceptions, but he can still rack up some yards. So if you're struggling at the two quarterback spot and you see that Jameis Winston is playing, you might want to look his way because he's at least going to get you some volume there in fantasy wise. Game wise, I'm not sure if he's going to be capable to win against the Buccaneers. That would remain to be seen. But, in the end, I wouldn't worry too much if you're an Olave or Michael Thomas owner. And I believe you have Alvin Kamara coming back this week as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, we
so
do.
the Saints have that to look forward to. It's going to be an interesting game. I believe they are playing at Tampa Bay. I might be mistaken there, but it's really interesting. You might want to keep an eye on Derek Carr's status if you own him. You might want to look towards Jameis Winston if he is not playing. But yeah, that's what I got for that. However, I also do want to talk about someone who is going to play this week, and it is Brandon Ayuk. He is going to be playing against the Cardinals. He's off the injury report completely. He's completely healthy. He should be back to his normal self this game. So Ayuk owners, you guys, we shouldn't have to worry about a thing in this game.
Yeah, definitely big news, not only just for Ayuk owners, but for Brock Purdy fantasy owners, especially since the next person I'm going to talk about is actually Deebo Samuel. Coming into this game, questionable with a rib injury. And according to most reports, he was the more banged up of the two wide receivers. So obviously, if you are a Deebo Samuel fantasy owner, I mean, even if he does play this week, I just, rib injury, it's one of those injuries that kind of affects you, even if it's still tender and whatnot going into the next week. Your movement is just not going to. I don't think he's going to be explosive. And the Cardinals defense has no slouch. They were able to stymie and make the Cowboys offense, look like a completely different team last week. So um, if you have another option at the wide receiver or flex position, I would definitely look to move somewhere else, even if Samuel is active. But it's looking like he's on the wrong side of questionable this week. So um, let's move on to game of the week segment. I'm actually going to do something a little unconventional here. I'm going to talk about two games, and the reason being is because they're both similar situations. Plus, if you look at the game slot this week, outside of the Miami and Bill game, it's there's a lot of for fantasy matchups this week. But I'm going to talk about Minnesota, Carolina, and Denver, Chicago. 0-3, 0-3, 0-3, 0-3. It's a lot of winless action going on right there. All these teams are absolutely desperate for a win, and their backs are against the wall. And obviously, coming into this season, um, Minnesota is probably the only one that had truthful playoff hopes, being a division winner last year, and their back is against the wall right now. They really need to, they have an offense that is not struggling. So I look to see them have the advantage in this game. But Bryce Young coming back this week, we'll see. I mean, Carolina, they're in the same situation. I mean, they were only a hop, skip, and a jump away from being in that division lead in their division last year. And now it's starting to seem like, with all the other teams in their division able to win games with their young quarterbacks and their new, fresh situations they have going on. They're kind of in if we don't win this week, we're going to have to start changing our approach for where are we going with this year. And then on the flip side, so for Denver, Chicago, two offenses that I thought would have done a lot better so far this year, and a couple of defenses that I would have also expected to do a lot better. I just see a lot of fantasy points in both of these games because I see it just being desperation. All four of these teams are going to be throwing everything they have at each other this week, and with the lack of um, scout defenses, I mean, I could be completely wrong here, but I definitely see some action. If you got players in these games, I'm starting the good players in these games because there's going to be some heavy blows going on each side. These teams just have to win this week. Kyle, go ahead and
All right.
take it away.
So my game of the week is going to be Dolphins at Bills here. We got an offense that has just been playing insanely well against a defense who has been playing also insanely well. They're going to collide. And that's not to say the Bills, they also have a great offense as well. So this whole dynamic is going to be quite an interesting game. Very important divisional matchup for potential playoff implications down the line here. If you're in fantasy, I would say all playmakers here are startable. You got Tyreek, Waddle, of course, and Stephon Diggs. You have Josh Allen to Mostert. You have to start him after the game he had last week. It's going to be a fun game for me, really. And, there's just going to be a lot of back and forth. And honestly, it's hard for me to say who's going to win this one, but I'm going to personally predict that this score is going to be Miami 41, Buffalo 38.
Yeah, would be a dream to see a game like that, for sure. But that really is the only game on the slot on the this week that looks like it's going to be just an absolute guns blazing shootout.
Oh, yeah.
So let's jump right into the send it, end it portion of this week. And I'm going to start off with someone who might come off as more of an obvious send it here, but he struggled to start off the year, and maybe some people are down on him. Joe Burrow against the Titans this week. They're going to Tennessee. He was able to play through that injury and muster up a win for his team last week, which is huge. The Bengals got off to a slow start last year. I mean, I think we're looking at pretty much a similar type of situation to last season. If the Bengals can go into Tennessee, win back-to-back games, and get cooking, get get some respect back on their name after people were you know saying that it's over for them after the first 2 weeks. I mean, this Tennessee pass defense has not um, they just haven't been able to shut people down, and especially a guy like Burrow with arguably the best 1-2 combo in the NFL right now for receivers. I predict 300 plus passing yards, and he should be able to look like the normal Joe Cool that we see week in and week out. Kyle, who's your first?
All right, so my first send it of the week is going to be Miles Sanders against the Vikings here. And the reason he's my send it is because this Minnesota defense, we all know they're a little bit soft. It's the main reason why they're 0-3 right now. It certainly isn't the offense's fault. And I think Miles Sanders is going to have a great game. He's been catching some passes out of the backfield here, especially if you're in a PPR league. You might want to be looking at Sanders. I would heavily recommend you start him in this game. It's going to be a lot of Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, that sort of side of the ball for the Panthers. But I think it's a great matchup here. The stars are aligning for Miles Sanders here, and I expect him to do big things in this game.
Perfect. What do you got next?
All right. What I got next right here, I got a wide receiver in Houston, Tank Dell, against the Steelers. Stroud loves this guy. I mean, he's been getting involved more and more as the weeks go on. And to be honest with you, Tank Dell has been showing some flashes that I'm seeing, and I'm just like, this guy is going to, make a name for himself this season. So, like, Tank Dell, especially with Stroud's looking promising. They're going up against this good Steelers defense, but I think that they're still going to be able to get Dell involved in this game. He's going to be productive. At least that's what I think. So, yeah, that's all I got to say really about Tank Dell there. What's your next send it?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say he's definitely put himself on the map, and Stroud has starting to look more and more comfortable there. So his pass catchers are able to get some fantasy relevance going in. But my next is going to be Alvin Kamara. We talked about him earlier for a little bit, but he's back. He's back. If you drafted him and stashed him on your bench, and you've seen where the Saints' backfield has gone with Jamal Williams going on IR, and the Tony Jones, I believe is his name, has been kind of the fill-in guy. Now with perfect opportunity here in his first game back with Derek Carr on the ropes. Is he going to play? I mean, if he does or he doesn't, I think that if he doesn't, actually, it'd be more beneficial because just going into the game script aspect, and obviously, I think Jameis Winston and Alvin Kamara have a little bit of chemistry playing with each other in the past. I see that even if Kamara doesn't have more than 40 or 50 rushing yards this week, he should be able to come in with his 6 or 7 catches for another 50 or 60, and hopefully punch it in once or twice. So against this Tampa Bay defense, that's not dominating on either side of the ball, is respectable, but it's a divisional matchup. Both of these teams just got handed their first loss last week, and one of these teams has got to come out on top and out on top for the division. So, I mean, yeah, it should be a claws out battle to the end here. So I'll skip right into my next. It's going to be a wide receiver for Pittsburgh, George Pickens. Obviously, last season he came into the league, flashed his huge playmaking ability. The guy has amazing hands. Even without that, this matchup against the Texans, the Steelers really, really need to continue their surge, of winning and showing that they're going to be relevant come December, come January. It's going to start with Kenny Pickett and George Pickens getting that connection established, getting the offense moving so that defense doesn't have to come out and then have to pull a rabbit out of their hat every game, because that's what it seems like it's been for so far. TJ Watt has been pretty much their offense as well as their defense. So I expect that Pickens is going to get loose for 100 plus yards in this game, and the if I'm Kenny Pickett, I'm looking to him and looking to get vertical here in this game against this Texans defense this week. So Kyle, go ahead and wrap up this segment for us, and we'll move on to the end.
All right. So my last send it of the day is Anthony Richardson versus the Rams. When this guy isn't getting knocked out of games, he's been a rushing machine. He's been putting up great fantasy points. Regardless, he's been pretty great on the ground. So he collects those rushing yards. He pounds it in the end zone. He does great. So as long as he can stay healthy this game, he's good to go for this week against the Rams. He was cleared from concussion protocol. He would be a great start in my opinion.
Yeah, excited to see him come back and play a full game and not try to be Superman out there. But you can go ahead and start us on the end.
All right, so my first end it of the day is Tyler Algier against Jacksonville. I don't really like London games when it comes to fantasy because I feel like London games are always weird. The players are all jet lagged from going across to another country, and it just kind of puts everyone into a weird atmosphere. But Tyler Algier, this is a Jacksonville team that's looking to bounce back from a Houston team that honestly kind of embarrassed them last week, and they're probably not going to make it pretty on the Falcons. The Falcons are probably going to try and do their best, but they're just kind of more of a grounded out team. Jacksonville is more of an air it out, and I can see this game getting out of hand rather quickly if the Falcons, can't get something going through the air here. And Tyler Algier, I think they're just going to get Bijan Robinson involved more. I know Algier was catching passes in the backfield and whatnot. I just don't see him doing well against this Jacksonville team, especially if Jacksonville looks to dominate this game, which I think they will. Yeah, that's why I'm just not confident at all in Tyler Algier.
Yeah, the London games, I will agree with you on that. Usually have some one of the players that you least expect to come out, and I remember with Jacksonville, was it a couple years ago? Is when they got their first win in London on a game-winning field goal, I believe. So I don't know. With Jacksonville, they might have that special romance with London and that connection. We'll see. But I'll start off with saying Quentin Johnson is my first end it this week. Obviously, Josh Palmer is the guy to pick up in the Los Angeles offense there with the absence of Mike Williams. And some people are going to say, oh, well, Josh Palmer or one of these guys is just going to turn into Mike Williams. And obviously, let's face it, neither of these guys are Mike Williams. I don't think either of them are as prolific as a downfield playmaker as he is. But Josh Palmer has been serviceable. He was serviceable last year. We saw it in the absence of both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I think that's the guy they're going to go with to immediately kind of fill that void. But realistically, that 10 to 12 targets that Mike Williams sees week in and week out, that's going to be spread out amongst those pass catchers, Parham and Palmer and Johnson, and even Kelly and Eckler when they get back. I mean, there's plenty of mouths to feed. It's a crushing loss to them, but it shouldn't be. With Kellen Moore has done well with their offense so far as translating into their offensive coordinator. So I see Quentin Johnson still. He's only had at most 2 catches for just barely 11 or 12 yards so far as his ceiling right now. So I don't see him having a massive impact right off the bat. So at least for this week, definitely keep him out of your lineup if you have him stashed or if you picked him up.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's kind of a murky situation with him. He's probably still getting adjusted to the offense and whatnot, so it's best to play it safe there. So for my second end it, I got another rookie wide receiver. It might be a little bit of a surprise to people, but I'm not so hot on Zay Flowers this week. Going into Cleveland, they have a great defense. They have that great cornerback Denzel Ward. He's going to be covering him. Rashad Bateman and OBJ have been ruled out for this game, so it's just going to be Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. It's going to make the job kind of easier for this great Cleveland defense to just kind of guard those 2 players and just kind of take out the offense. Of course, you got Lamar Jackson in there, but I'm sure they're game planning for him as well. It's just going to be tough because there's no one else out there to take away targets, from Zay Flowers. They're going to target him, sure, but they're probably also going to be covering him pretty well as well. So I just don't feel like Zay Flowers is worth a start this week. I mean, if you absolutely have to, then maybe sure, because he has had a few productive games already this season. I'm just not liking this matchup against the Cleveland defense. They've stymied Joe Burrow in that first game, and they also gave Pittsburgh fits. I know Pittsburgh isn't exactly a crazy offense or anything, but they couldn't do anything against that Cleveland defense. So I'm just not sold on Flowers for this week for that reason.
Yeah, and you can add the Titans to that list. Couldn't even get in the end zone. Yeah, no, I don't. Even volume wise, Zay Flowers might be able to muster up 60 or 70 yards. But I would not be surprised if Cleveland held Baltimore without a touchdown this week with the injuries that they've had. It's going to be Lamar Jackson's going to need to show up and show us, why he is top five quarterback. If he is a top five quarterback, maybe in his mind he still is. Um, my second end is going to be Brian Robinson. The Commanders just looked, well, I should say Sam Howell mainly looked absolutely piss poor last week against the Bills. Turned it over 4 times. So I think he was lucky. Robinson was lucky to get 70 yards last week on the ground um, with that just absolutely atrocious performance on his part. So it really scripted out the run game. But this week, going against the Philly defense that went into Tampa Bay and just said, hey, Rachaad White, you're not part of this offense. Just basically completely took him out of the offense. I think he was held to less than 40 yards. It was just it's a no run zone over there. Forget about the no fly zone. It's a no run zone over in Philly right now. And so this team is going to have to travel into Philly. It's a divisional game, and they're coming off just getting walloped by the Bills. I see it being another. If they might have some garbage time action, but I see it being another really insane matchup for this team, and they're going to have to look to the air, look to get creative against this Philly defense that is just not going to give you anything for free. So, with that being said, I think you can find a better option than Brian Robinson. The potential there is just not there. And I'll slip right into my last one here. This one might come off as some people might consider it a little controversial, which is okay. I've done my research here, and I've been a Mike Evans fantasy owner in the past. But yeah, Mike Evans, he is my last end it for this week. He's going up against the Saints. I believe it's in New Orleans as well. If you look back in history, there's been a little, Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore. There's been some heated games amongst these two, and top athletes in the league. And I think that Marshawn Lattimore has gotten the best of Mike Evans. So going back, looking at the last 3 seasons, the last 6 games, these two teams, and mind you, this is when we had Tom Brady throwing to Mike Evans instead of just a lowly Baker Mayfield, who has been serviceable to start off the year. But let's not forget, it's still just Baker Mayfield versus the GOAT here. Mike Evans has averaged only 6.1 fantasy points a game going into these last 6 games, last 6 matchups. And that's non PPR, but still, he's had 2 touchdowns in those 6 games. And when he had those touchdown games, if you look at the yardage and catch totals, the touchdown was all there was. It was a salvaging touchdown. He has not had more than 64 yards receiving against New Orleans in the last 3 years. I see that continuing. It's Marshawn Lattimore is going to be all over him. This Saints defense is still legitimate. We've seen it so far this year, and going into the who'd at home field. It should be a tough game. This should be more of a defensive game, in my opinion, for both these teams. But anyway, enough of that. I'll let you get on with your last end it here.
My last end it. I want to go back to your Brian Robinson end it because I want to add on to that. I want to go ahead and say anything Commanders against the Eagles, I'm ending it on. Even Terry McLaurin. I just, this Eagles team, this Eagles defense, probably the best defense in the league, maybe. At least they're up there, top three, top five. So anything Commander, they're going to struggle. Sam Howell struggled last week. It's going to be an ugly game for the Commanders, in my opinion. Maybe Terry McLaurin will get involved a little bit, but you have Darius Slay out there. You have James Bradbury out there. It's just going to be very difficult for the Commanders to do anything. They're going to have to get really creative on offense for sure. So, anything Commander, I just wouldn't. I don't have confidence in it. I wouldn't start him this week. Just put him on your bench. Live to see another week. Just don't do it.
Should be an easy decision, but was that your last? Was Terry
Oh,
McLaurin your last?
yeah, Terry McLaurin was my last end for the week.
Perfect. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, all right, folks. Well, that's about it here for us this week. Good luck in all of your matchups this week. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Just remember to like and subscribe. Go follow us on all of our other platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Patreon, YouTube. We appreciate you guys' support, and we will see you on Thursday for the Thursday night preview.